And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Ryan Metzler.
Hey everybody, it's Ryan Metzler here again, and today we're going to check out a wine-making game. Now this is not the most unique theme, although it hasn't been done a whole lot, but there are other games that do it. There's Vinos and a couple of others that do winemaking. This one is Viticulture, which I did a preview for during their Kickstarter campaign, so I'm not going to cover the gameplay too much in this video. What I am going to cover is the component quality and then the included expansion that comes in this box. The game is by Stonemaier Games. It plays a wide range of player values, but real quick, why don't we open up this nice looking box. We'll see what comes in here, we'll look at the expansion, and then I'll come back here and give you my final opinion on the package as a whole. So since I've already covered the gameplay of Viticulture in another video when I did the preview, why don't we just go over the components real quick. I'll tell you what I think about those. I'll tell you about the expansion briefly, and then of course we'll meet back at the end and I'll give you my opinion of the game that you never got before. So what we're looking at here is the main player board for the game. Of course the game is about making wine, so we're looking at a vineyard here with several different playing areas. Now this board is very well made. It's got a nice feel to it. It's nice and sturdy. In addition, it's printed on both sides. One side not having all of the text description of how to play, the other side with all of the descriptions. I'm always going to use the side with the descriptions, but it's nice to have a nice cleaner side for those players who want to, have a beautiful clean look to their game. In addition, each player is going to get their own little player board with their crush pad, their areas to build all of their own special buildings and so forth, and likewise these are printed on both sides, so you can see here that one side doesn't have all the labeling, the other side has text on it to tell you exactly what everything does. Another great touch. The decks of cards are pretty standard. You have your vine cards. They're just like cards. I mean, they're small, mini, I guess, Euro-sized cards. Same thing for the summer visitors, which lets you take actions in the summer, as well as the orders you're trying to fulfill. And the winter visitors, which have winter actions on them. So these are all pretty standard components. You also get these nice beads to represent your wines. These are a nice touch. They're not little cardboard tokens. Instead, you have the glass beads. All very nice. And then you have money tokens. And you have the nice 1, 5, I guess there's also 2s, money tokens to let you keep track of how much money you have in the game. And these are all specialized on the other side. They all have a sponsor on them, which was from the Kickstarter. They're pretty well made. They feel nice and substantial in your hand, so they're a good component to play with. In addition, each player has their own little set of meeples, and there's a generalized special meeple for whoever gets the extra worker. But you have a rooster that is going to be your wake-up marker, which determines where you're going to go in turn order and what your benefit will be for the turn. You're going to have all types of different little building meeples for each building that you build. So this one here is the trellis that you can use when you build your trellis. It'll go on your board here to show that you've built it. Or you have all types of different cellars that you can build. And these may look the same, but they're not. So this one has a smaller doorway, which is one of your medium cellar, whereas this one has a larger doorway, which is your large cellar. So they're actually distinct. You have a your windmill here, so you can see that all of these different meeples are very well detailed. You have irrigation, and they're very nice touch, although unnecessary. They're a nice touch that just kind of brings a sense of quality to the game. So now that we've looked at all of those, here's the first player marker. It's a grape, so you pass that around. But now that we've looked at all of the components, why don't we real quick look at the included expansion and talk about it very briefly. So here we are looking at the Arboriculture expansion to Viticulture. It's just a couple of extra pieces, but adds a whole new element to the game. So I flipped the board over here simply because that allows for a place to put the arbor cards on the board. Now these cards are basically like vine cards, except for that they have different things on them. For example, olives or tomatoes or apples. And each one of your fields, which you had in the previous version of the game, can now support at least, or well, at most, one of these vines. So in addition to your grapes that you plant there, you may also plant one of these cards in order to harvest these different types of goods. Also on the board, you'll see that the extra bonus action spots for the Play a Summer and Winter Visitor cards are covered by these little heart tokens. These are going to be morale boosts that are going to boost up the morale of your workers, I guess, which can potentially provide you with extra victory points. Now, this morale tracker is actually on your little arbor sheet here, which has extra actions that you can use throughout the game, as well as your morale tracker. And you'll see if you ever get all the way to the top of the morale tracker, you're going to get +1 victory point, and if you ever go all the way to the bottom, you're going to lose a victory point. So keeping your morale, at least in the center, is important, and getting it all the way to the top could provide you with bonus victory points to get you to the 20 you need to win the game. In addition, you're going to start with the grande worker here. Instead of starting with 3 workers, you're going to start with 2 normal workers and 1 grande worker, who when placed, even if he's not placed on the center, will allow you to use the bonus of the center spot of whatever area you're placing on. If you don't know what that means, check out my other video on viticulture so that you can see how the game plays. In addition to all of those changes, you'll see that we have several different things out here on the board. We have some new actions. So for example, we have the leisure action. You can place a worker here to increase your morale by 1, which of course can get you up to the 1 victory point spot if, you're going for that. You have the cask spot, which when used can increase the value of one of your wines that you've already made on your other sheet that I showed you earlier, this sheet here. So once you have your wines, you can increase the value of one of your wines by 1 as long as you have the appropriate cellar to store it in. You can also use your workers to make olive oil and tomato sauce, but first you're going to have olives or tomatoes. So when you do that, you're going to have your planted olives or your planted tomatoes in one of your fields, and when you harvest that field, you're going to place a marker onto your refinery or your millstone to represent an olive in the millstone, or the refinery is going to be your tomatoes. So when you place on these, you can convert your tomatoes into tomato sauce, you can convert your olives into olive oil. And you would convert whatever ones you have there into the appropriate goods. So if I had 2 tomatoes here, I could convert them into 2 tomato sauce. And if I had 1 olive, I could convert it into 1 olive oil. And those are the maximum those areas can hold. Apples do not have to be converted, but you can put them there and you can sell them later for money, or you can use them to increase your morale. Now, the purpose of tomato sauce and olive oil is that when you fill a order, when you're filling one of your wine orders that we talked about earlier, you're going to be able to include up to 1 tomato sauce and 1 olive oil per wine order. And what this is going to do is it's going to give you extra points for that wine order. So if you include a tomato sauce, it gets you 1 extra point. And if you include an olive oil, it gets you 2 extra points. So balancing these goods with your wine orders and turning them in to get the extra victory points can give you a significant boost in getting to those 20 VPs you need to end the game, and the 25 maximum VPs you need, of course, to guarantee a win unless you're tied with someone else. So that's basically the basis of this game. It includes some new actions, some new goods that you can use to boost your victory point values when turning in a wine order, and hopefully win the game. Well, there you have it. That is Viticulture from Stonemaier Games. A pretty good game, one that plays 2 to 6, although I don't think I would suggest it at the 6-player mark, simply because if you start out last in turn order, you're going to be choosing things later for a very long time. And this is because although you progress by passing the turn to the left as usual, the 1st-player marker passes to the right. And so it takes 3 turns for you to get anywhere close always, no matter which way the thing we're going, to being the 1st player and having an earlier choice. And so you could be completely locked out of an action, which you can take, 3 different people can take the same action for 3 turns. So if you wanted to, for example, plant a vine, you couldn't do so for 3 turns. Feasibly. Now this is not a problem with a 4-player game, and I think it works out very well as a 4-player game, probably even better than the 2 or 3-player games, insofar as that things rotate around a little bit faster, you can get the actions you want a little bit earlier, and it just balances out a little bit better than a 6-player rotation. The game plus the expansion is very interesting, and it's a nice inclusion that they've given you a way to expand the game once you've either mastered the base game, or you feel like you just want something a little bit different. You can throw in that arboriculture expansion. You can have your tomatoes and your olives and your apples to add to things. It provides an interesting aspect of kind of trying to glom things onto your wine orders and score more points faster, but of course you have to manage more actions in order to do so. So all in all, a good game. I wouldn't recommend it at the higher player numbers, but at the lower and middle player numbers, I think it's very interesting. One that you should definitely check out and has some great production quality, as you saw in the video. So if that sounds good to you, check it out. That is Viticulture from Stonemaier Games.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.